Good morning, children. Now we are into the chapter Africa. Already we discussed the location of the continent Africa in my previous class. Now we are going to extract some of the points from this chapter are the physical features of Africa, like the plateaus, rivers, lakes, okay, the deserts, what are all present in African continent, okay. Then coming to the rainfall, the climate, rainfall, then the people of Africa, the social conditions, how they lived and all, the slave trade by the European colonies, okay. Then the crops what they grew, then the minerals which are present in Africa. These are the some of the things which we are going to know. As I told you that the deserts, the largest mountain, okay, then the lakes which are important in this continent we are going to see now. And before that, in my previous class, I asked the students to prepare your own video that explaining taking some of the topics. One of the students has taken this African continent and told about Africa is that why Africa was called as dark continent means unknowingly, it's not child's mistake, unknowingly the child told that because the people who live in Africa are dark, so it is called as dark continent. I'm very sorry, my dear, it is not correct. Now I tell you why African continent is called as dark continent and all. We are going to know much more about Africa, okay. Now you can see the map here, okay. You see the Kalahari desert, okay, then Sahara desert, then the mountain Kilimanjaro you can see, Victoria Lake you can see, then Lake Tanganyika, okay, then Congo River, Nile River, okay. These are the things which we are going to observe. Now first let me tell you why Africa was known as the dark continent. Immediately we get the answer that the African continent was not known by Europeans because Europeans could not find Africa because Europe is covered all the sides water, like Mediterranean Sea, Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean. So Europe is covered by water all the sides, so they could not find Africa, most of the continent. That is why they called it as dark continent. But this answer is misleading us by saying Africa is a dark continent. It is not true, children. The European sailors took a long time to get into Africa because many reasons are there for that. Because it remained unexplored for fairly long period of time. Now let us see what are the factors made difficult for the explorers, okay, to get into the continent Africa. Because the largest desert in the world is the Sahara Desert, children. So you can see here this Sahara Desert. Most of the northern part of Africa is covered by Sahara Desert. It acted as a natural barrier for the Europeans to explore, children. It is very difficult to cross it. So it acted as natural barrier for the European explorers to get into Africa. Then one more thing is very less good harbors in Africa you see, because to Europeans to sail into the country there were no proper harbors. Then the third point is that African continent is made up of plateau. As I told you in my previous class, that you see Africa a big plateau region which rises steeply, okay, the coasts making it difficult to reach interior parts of the continent. The coastal area is very less and it is very steep to get into the continent. It is the high land. Above the sea level, it is very high land. So, European explorers could not get into this high land. That is why they called it as dark continent. Then, one more thing, the rivers of Africa, before they reach the sea, forms high waterfalls. You can see here, Niger River, Congo River, okay. These rivers, before they join the sea, they form high waterfalls. పైనుంటి కిందికి పడడం వలన మనకి అంత ఈజీగా ఆఫ్రికన్ కాంటినెంట్ లోపలికి వెళ్ళడానికి కాలేదు. ఓకే, సో some of the reasons why European explorers or sailors could not get into Africa and called it as dark continent. It is the misleading answer which we get. But before that, Africa had a trade with other countries, other parts of the world, and it was very rich in gold and diamond mines. Europeans actually, they were very much interested in making the colonies and making people as slaves. So that is why they called them as, to suppress them, they called them as dark continent. Okay, and moreover, very hot region you see here in this continent. You can see the equator passing through in the middle of the continent. Can you see this? Equator. Okay. So this region, this equator which passes through the center of Africa, okay, makes very hot. The center of Africa is very hot. Above the equator and below the equator, like this Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn also passes through this country. In between this region, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, between the equator region, this part, okay, is very hot. This climate made people inhospitable. It is a little bit difficult to live there because of equator which passes through. అక్కడ చాలా వేడి ఉండడం వలన కూడాను మనకు ఉండడానికి కష్టంగా ఉంటుంది. So there we see or we find the heavy rainfall also. Okay, ekkadaithe equator region undo, this region, you find heavy rains. Okay, ఇది కూడా ఒకటి మనకు కారణమవుతుంది. So it is not because people live, dark people live there. It is because that it was not known to most of the parts of the world. These are not correct. These 2 points are not valid. Okay, but the reason why it was called, because most of the explorers could not get into the continent. అంటే చాలా మటుకు ఆఫ్రికన్ కాంటినెంట్ లోపలికి వెళ్ళడానికి సాధ్యం కాలేదు because of the plateau region, because of not having proper harbors. Okay, it was not made them to get into Africa. సో మనం ముఖ్యంగా తెలుసుకోవాల్సింది అక్కడ నల్ల జాతీయులు ఉండడం వలన వాళ్ళని మనము డార్క్ కాంటినెంట్ అని పిలుస్తాము అనేదో, లేకపోతే యూరోపియన్స్కి వాళ్ళు ఆఫ్రికన్ కాంటినెంట్ లోపలికి వెళ్ళడానికి కాలేదు కాబట్టి చాలా వరకు తెలీదు. బికాస్ పీపుల్ దే వర్ అన్నోన్, యూరోపియన్స్ వర్ అన్నోన్, నాట్ నోన్. ఆఫ్రికా అనేసి డార్క్ కాంటినెంట్ అని పిలవడము, దీస్ ఆర్ నాట్ కరెక్ట్. ఓకే, సో ఐ హోప్ యూ అండర్స్టూడ్ వై ఆఫ్రికా వాజ్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ డార్క్ కాంటినెంట్. అండ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ఆల్సో కాల్డ్ యాజ్ ద క్రాడల్ ఆఫ్ హ్యూమన్ కైండ్. It was called as cradle of humankind. Means, what do you mean by that? Ante our ancestors, okay, akkada manaku moolalu dorukutayi ane dani valana we call it as the cradle of humankind. Okay children, now let us go deep into it. Okay, you see here the largest peak in Africa is Kilimanjaro. You can see in the map the triangle shape which is given, Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. The place Tanzania, you can see here this part, this one. Okay, then the Victoria is the largest lake in Africa. Lake Victoria, above that you can see near equator, you can see Lake Victoria. Okay, this is the largest lake and which is the freshwater, largest freshwater lakes in the world. In the world itself, this is the largest freshwater lake. Okay, keep in mind children, some of the points are very important. Okay, Kilimanjaro in Tanzania in Africa is the biggest or highest peak mountain. Okay, Kilimanjaro, Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest peak in Africa, and Lake Victoria is the largest freshwater lake in the world. Sahara and Kalahari, you can see here Kalahari, this is Kalahari desert in South Africa, and Sahara desert. These are the two biggest deserts in Africa we see. Then long river like Nile river, can you see, which passes through Egypt. Okay, most of the Egypt is actually covered with desert. Okay, because of Nile river this civilization flourished here. In my introduction part I told you the 10 important civilizations. Under that, this is the third important civilization which flourished in Africa on the banks of river Nile river. Okay, Egyptian civilization, which is called as Egyptian civilization. Okay, then Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn passes through, and the part between this area is very this is also called as temperate zone, ante it is, you find very hot there. Okay, and then the zone between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn as tropic region అని పిలుస్తాం మనం దీన్ని. Large part of Africa on both sides of equator receive heavy rainfall. In south there is a arid region called Kalahari desert. Arid means dry. Here you don't get much rain. ఇక్కడ చాలా తక్కువ వర్షాలు పడుతూ ఉంటాయి. ఓకే, then people with different languages and lifestyles, habits live in different regions of Africa. As usual, everywhere in all parts of the world, how different people, like different with languages, cultures, lifestyle, you see different people living in Africa. Then not only this, Europeans were familiar only with the northern coastal regions of Africa. As I told you that Europeans could see northern part of Africa, this near Mediterranean Sea, okay, this part. Okay, you can see the northern part of Africa. Europeans knew or were familiar with northern part of coastal region of Africa. But Indians and Arab travelers knew about eastern coast. Can you see here? This eastern coast, Gulf of Aden, then this Red Sea, this Lake Victoria, Kilimanjaro, this coast, can you see? East coast. Okay. Eastern part of Africa, India lies towards the eastern part of Africa. So Indians and Arab traders knew about eastern coast of Africa. Then how can we say that Africa was dark continent? Because nobody knew it. It is only Europeans who could not find it, but other parts of the world like Indians and Arabs, they knew it, Africa. So it is the misleading answer which is given by them. Okay, children. So Africa is the cradle of humankind, we can call it, as I told you, because the modern human evolution, the theories says that our ancestors, our forefathers, మన యొక్క పూర్వీకుల యొక్క ఎవల్యూషన్ అనేది ఆఫ్రికాలో జరిగింది అనే దానికి మనకు ఎవిడెన్సెస్ దొరుకుతాయి. ఓకే, సో ఇట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్, ఇట్ ఈస్ అ ప్లేస్ ఇన్ ఆఫ్రికా, ద క్రాడల్ ఆఫ్ హ్యూమన్ కైండ్ అనేది ఒక ప్లేస్. అది ఆ ప్లేస్ని మనము అలా పిలుస్తాం ఎందుకంటే మన యొక్క పూర్వీకుల యొక్క ఎవల్యూషన్, అంటే మానవ జాతి ఎలా పుట్టింది, ఎక్కడ మొదలయ్యింది అనే దానికి నిదర్శనం మనకు అక్కడ ఎన్నో సాక్ష్యాలు దొరకడం వలన we call it as the cradle of humankind అని పిలుస్తాం. Then you see the vast plateau region there. Okay, coming to this, deserts and all I told you. The islands, coming to islands, the biggest island is Madagascar. Can you see here? I'll show you first. This, can you see Madagascar? Near Indian Ocean. Madagascar is the biggest island belong to African continent. Okay, then this plateau region, when you see this map, you can understand. This part is called as the plateau region. Okay, there are several mountains on this plateau. The highest peak of Africa is Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, as I told you. Then okay, moving to this plateau region, children, you see many mountains, rivers, lakes. Okay, here. Then this some large lakes on the plateau. You see some big lakes. Okay, Lake Victoria, then Lake Tanganyika. These are the lakes we see here. Then from this fresh lake, you can see the river which takes its birth. Africa's largest lake is Victoria, as I said. From this lake, Many rivers takes birth. The longest river in Africa is Nile River. Okay. Other long rivers in Africa include Congo River, Niger River, Zambezi River. Okay. Then the Nile River helped the civilization. Okay. Here Egyptian civilization, what we call, flourished. Okay. Egyptian civilization is several thousand years old. The waters of the Nile have helped to irrigate the fields of Egypt for thousands of years. Then coming to climate, as I told you that equator passes here. This region is called as hot region, and we find heavy rainfall. Okay. We also have temperate regions, northern part and southern, extreme north and south, the temperate region, where you see less rainfall. Only in rainy season we find rain. Okay. We find both summers and winters in Africa. It is very hot in some places, receive heavy rainfall. We have different climate, hot regions, very hot, and scanty rainfall in northern and southern parts of Africa. Scanty means very less rainfall, having less rainfall. That is why this desert has formed. Regions with heavy rainfall, or both sides of equator receive heavy rainfall. Central and western Africa, the central part of Africa and western part of Africa, they receive heavy rainfall. Because of this heavy rainfall, we see this densely forests and thick forests due to heavy rainfall. Okay. And warm climate, వేడిగానే ఉంటుంది. ఆ వేడిగా ఉండడం వలన ఎక్కువ రెయిన్ఫాల్ కూడా ఉంటుంది. And because of this, very densely forests we see there. And with this, we see different animals and plants, different plants also we see. The regions with moderate and scanty rainfall is that surrounds with zone of heavy rainfall is that the northern and southern part of Africa. In some places only summer we see, and in some places throughout the year it rains. Okay. So we see the climatic condition with different climatic zones. We can divide Africa into different climatic zones, like hot region, moderate zone, temperate zone, like this we can divide. As in our country, dry and wet seasons are distinct in the zones of moderate rainfall. In Africa also you see the same thing. Due to moderate rainfall, tall grasses are grown, like here in the textbook they have given the pictures. The map is given. Okay. Here this part, the below Tropic of Tropic of Capricorn and above Tropic of Cancer region, the most northern part of Africa. Okay. Southernmost and northernmost parts of Africa. As in our country, dry and wet seasons, like how we feel the climatic conditions in our country, the same climatic conditions we come across in Africa also. Due to moderate rainfall, tall grasses are grown in this region. Moderate ga undadam valana ఒక మోస్తరుగా, అంటే ఎక్కువ వర్షము కాదు, తక్కువ ఇది కాదు, ఎండలు ఉన్నాయి, వర్షాలు పడుతూ ఉంటాయి. మోడరేట్గా ఉండడం వలన యూ సీ ద tall grass grown here. ఈవెన్ ఎలిఫెంట్స్ క్యాన్ హైడ్ ఇన్ దెమ్. అంటే ఎంత ఎత్తుకుంటాయంటే ఎలిఫెంట్స్ కూడాను వాటి కింద నిలబడుకోగలుగుతాయి. అంటే అంత ఎత్తుకి ఆ గ్రాస్ అనేది పెరుగుతుంది. అండ్ దిస్ రీజన్ వి కాల్ ఇట్ యాజ్ ద సవన్నా. ద రీజన్ ఈస్ నోన్ యాజ్ సవన్నా. అంటే ఏ రీజన్లో అయితే టాల్ గ్రాస్ పెరుగుతుందో, నార్దరన్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆఫ్రికా అండ్ సదరన్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆఫ్రికా. ఓకే, this region is called as savanna region, where different kinds of animals are also we can see here. Okay, a very large part of Africa is extremely arid, where the rainfall is scanty. There is no rainfall at all for several years. In some parts of Africa you don't see rains. varshale padani places kuda unnai, like in Kalahari Desert and Sahara Desert. Most of the northern part of Africa, you see that desert area where you see where you find no rainfall at all. Arid zone, like Kalahari region kuda. So thorny bushes and short grasses grow in some parts of the desert. Thorny, because in desert you find cactus, thorny plants. Akkada neelu, they don't require much water. This thorny plants or cactus doesn't require much water. So these are the plants which are grown in desert area. In other parts there are large stretches of sand, bare hills and rocks, stones and pebbles. In the south there is another region called Kalahari Desert. As I told you that in southern part of Africa you see Kalahari Desert. In the plateau region we see rivers, lakes, mountains, hills, rocks, sand, stone, everywhere. All natural, how you find natural realms in other parts of the earth, the same we find here also. Here you can see the pictures of Africa in the textbook page number 58, 50, 56, 57, 58. In 56 the physical features, the rivers, lakes and all is given. Then in 58 you can see the savanna region where the grass is grown so tall, where you see high rainfall, medium rainfall, low rainfall. All these areas are given clearly in the textbook page number 58, children. Once you see the textbook, like where you find high rainfall, where you find medium rainfall, very less low rainfall, with colored pictures they have given, you can understand very easily. Okay, then the people of Africa. Now let us see. The people with different languages, lifestyles and habits live in different regions of Africa. See, in each and every place you see different people living together. Like they speak different languages, they have their own lifestyle, their food habits, their economic and social stability, or the social life of people. We see different languages, we see different cultures. Okay, how quite it is common in different parts of the world, you see in Africa also the same thing. Since ancient times people have lived in small tribes carrying out hunting, gathering, animal husbandry and agriculture. As we all studied in our previous chapters, that how he started living from hunting life to growing like food crops. The same lifestyle you see in Africa also. The tribal people in India, we already studied about Konda Reddy, Burju, Koya, the tribal people. In the same way in Africa also people lived like tribal people, carrying out hunting, gathering food, collecting the food, Okay. Then cultivating agriculture. Hunters have inhabited the equatorial region and the deserts. Um, then the savanna region, grazing their animals on the extensive grasslands. And as I told you that people also uh, lived with animals, and these animals were grazing in savanna region. Means అనిమల్స్కి ఫుడ్ ఎక్కడ మనకి సవర్ణ గ్రాస్ ల్యాండ్స్లో వాటికి ఆహారం అనేది దొరుకుతుంది. Their animals on the extensive grasslands. Agriculture has long been carried out on river banks as well as on the margins of forests. There are several cities in the coast where traders from distant countries come to trade. This is the very important point which we have to notice, is that several cities on the coasts, the coastal area, అంటే సముద్రపు ఒడ్డు ఏదైతే కోస్టల్ ఏరియా ఉందో అక్కడ ద ట్రేడర్స్ ఫ్రమ్ డిఫరెంట్ పార్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ ద వరల్డ్, లైక్ ఇన్ ఈస్టర్న్ సైడ్ ఇండియా, ఏషియన్ కంట్రీస్, who traveled to Africa and had trade with the African people. So from this point also we can say that Africa is called as dark continent by Europeans because nobody knew it. It is not correct, children. Africa, Europe and Asia. Let us see the comparative knowledge. For a long time, people from other continents were largely ignorant about Africa. For a long time, people from other continents were largely ignorant about Africa because this is the point which we have to stress, is that only Europeans were familiar with northern coastal plains. Okay, it is not because any other reason, where thick forests are there, where dark people live there. These are not the reasons. The reason is that Europeans were familiar only northern part of Africa, coastal regions of Africa, and the other countries like India and Arabian countries, Arabian traders knew about eastern coast. The remaining part they didn't know because they couldn't get into Africa. అంటే ఆఫ్రికా కోస్టల్ రీజన్ మాత్రమే పరిచయం ఉండింది, ఆఫ్రికా లోపలికి వెళ్ళడానికి వాళ్ళకి సాధ్యం కాలేదు ఫర్ లాంగ్ టైమ్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ద ప్లాట్యూ రీజన్ హై లెవెల్లో ఉండడం కావచ్చు, అదర్వైజ్ ప్రాపర్ హార్బర్స్ లేకపోవడం కావచ్చు. These are the reasons why I told you in the beginning itself, some of the reasons what made them or other countries not get into African continent. కొన్ని రీజన్స్ వల్ల ఆఫ్రికా లోపలికి వెళ్ళడానికి కాలేదు, అందువలన ఆఫ్రికా పూర్తిగా వాళ్ళకి తెలియకపోవడం వలన it was unknown to other parts of the world. Apart from these coastal areas, neither the Europeans nor the Indians or any other trader had much knowledge about the interior parts of Africa. This point you make it underline, children. No country other than Europeans or Indians and Arab travelers, okay, the much knowledge about the interior parts of Africa was not known to anybody. ఆఫ్రికా చాలా వరకు చాలా మందికి తెలిసి ఉండిండలేదు. దట్ ఈస్ వై ఇట్ వాస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ డార్క్ కాంటినెంట్. అబౌట్ 500 years ago, Europeans began their attempts to reach India by the sea route. When Europeans started sailing, when they began sea routes to different parts of the world, okay, they made attempts to reach other parts of the world. They reached India by sea route by going around Africa. You can see Europe, this above Mediterranean, this part you can see Europe. Earlier in my previous class I showed you the European map. Okay, they crossed this Africa through this, children, Strait of Gibraltar. from here they passed this Atlantic Ocean, they reached Cape of Good Hope. Okay, traveling the Atlantic Ocean, they would stop over on the islands of Saint uh, Madeira and Azores. They were apprehensive about going south of these islands. They thought it would be so hot further south that the sea would be boiling. They had misconception and uh, that this region like Madeira and Azores, these are the places where these islands, okay, surrounded by water which is boiling. అంటే అక్కడ ఉన్నటువంటి ఈ ఐలాండ్స్ చుట్టూ ఉన్న నీళ్లు వేడిగా ఉంటుందేమో అనే ఒక అపోహతో వాళ్ళు అక్కడి నుంచి ముందుకు వెళ్ళలేకపోయారు. ఓకే, వేర్ యూ కెన్ సీ దిస్. They thought it would be so hot further because the sea would be boiling. మిస్కన్సెప్షన్, ఒక అపోహ వాళ్ళకి తెలియకపోవడం వలన అక్కడి నుంచి ముందుకు ఆఫ్రికా లోపలికి వెళ్ళలేకపోయారు. ఓకే, దెన్ పోర్చుగీస్ సెయిలర్ నేమ్డ్ వాస్కో డ గామా went around the southern tip of Africa and reached India. When the Europeans, they started sea routes to different parts of the world, when they reached India, it was that Vasco da Gama who went around the southern tip of Africa, this Cape of Good Hope and all. You can see this southern tip Africa below Kalahari Desert. Okay, can you see this Cape of Good Hope? And from here, okay, Madagascar and all, through Indian Ocean, they reached India. The African coast, when we are studying about Europe, you must have noticed its broken coastline, the gulfs and bays of Europe. అంటే ఎక్కువగా యూరోప్లో గల్ఫ్స్ బేస్ ఉండడం వలన అక్కడ కోస్ట్ లైన్ అంత ప్రాపర్గా ఉండదు. ఓకే, దట్ ఈస్ వై they started traveling the other parts of the world. Initially, when Europeans tried to go inland, many African tribes came in direct conflict with them. These Europeans, there is no place in on this earth that where they had relationship with other parts of the world. Europeans ki ప్రపంచంలో ఆల్మోస్ట్ ఏ ప్లేస్తో కూడా సంబంధం లేదు అనడానికి లేదు. బికాస్ దే మేడ్ కాలనీస్ ఎవ్రీవేర్, దే స్టార్టెడ్ రూలింగ్, దే క్యాప్చర్డ్ ద ప్లేసెస్, దే సమ్ ఆఫ్ ద పార్ట్స్ దే మేడ్ ద పీపుల్ ఆఫ్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ ప్లేస్ స్లేవ్స్. ఇలా యూరోపియన్స్ ఆక్యుపై చేసుకోవడం, మేకింగ్ యాజ్ కాలనీస్, ఇలా చేస్తూ ఉంటూ most of the parts of the world ruled by Europeans like Dutch, French, British. These were the people who ruled different parts of the world. This we have studied in our previous chapter. They had conflict, వాళ్ళతో గొడవలు పడేవాళ్ళు. Africans beginning, when they started entering into African continent, they had conflict with the European people. దే హ్యాడ్ అన్ఫేర్ ట్రేడ్, అంటే ఒక న్యాయబద్ధమైన వ్యాపారం అనేది కాకుండా దోచుకోవడం, అన్యాయంగా చేయడం వ్యాపారం అనేది జరుగుతుండేది. దే మేడ్ దెమ్ స్లేవ్స్. ఓకే, ఆఫ్రికన్ పీపుల్ సోల్డ్ దెమ్ అబ్రాడ్. దోస్ హూ ఆర్ వెరీ పువర్, దే మేడ్ దెమ్ యాజ్ స్లేవ్స్ ఆఫ్ యూరోపియన్స్ and they brought out of African continent and they were sold to other parts like America. They wanted to establish their rule over Africa and exploit the resources. As I told you the point in the beginning itself, the African continent is famous for its gold and diamond mines. they wanted to exploit the natural resources like gold and diamond. ఇవి భూమిలో ఎక్కువగా దొరుకుతాయి ఆఫ్రికాలో కాబట్టి ఈ న్యాచురల్ రిసోర్స్ని దోచుకోవడానికి దే ఎక్స్ప్లాయిటెడ్ ద పీపుల్ ఆఫ్ ఆఫ్రికా. Hence, the African people resisted the efforts of foreigners to establish themselves in their land. They fought with them. They could control other traders getting into their country. In the 16th century, many Europeans began migrating to America and started cultivation there. In 16th century, Europeans began migrating to America. Europeans, because Europe is a small continent, people migrated to America in 16th century to live there and started cultivating there. For this cultivation, they require people. So, from Africa, they brought people to America. They made them as slaves. They extracted work from these people. Okay. They were tortured. These Africans, those people who made slaves and who brought to America, were tortured by these Europeans' children. There was plenty of land in America, but not enough people to work on the fields. To fill this gap, the slave trade from Africa began. As I told you, these Europeans started migrating to America, where there were no people, very less people living in America. The plenty of land was there to cultivate. So this made the advantage Europeans to live in America, and as there was plenty of land and to cultivate this land, they required people to work in the fields. So they brought Africans, making them as slaves and taking the work, extracting the work from these people in America. So we will see next the European colonies and all in my next class, children. Thank you.